evening and welcome to the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus February meeting. This month, we are featuring gubernatorial candidate and former Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley. Before we get to Mayor Cranley, though, just a few other things that are going on around the Progressive Caucus before we get started. First of all, we've got a couple of more upcoming candidates forums. On March 3rd, which is a Thursday, we will have the other candidate in the governor's race, former Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley. Towards the end of the month in March, I think it's March 29th, a Monday, we will have a candidates forum for the Cuyahoga County executive position. Both Democratic Party candidates, Chris Ronayne and Tariq Shabazz, will be appearing at that event. And kind of what I think is sort of a special announcement. Our office in Lakewood has kind of been dormant throughout the pandemic, but that is going to change very quickly because the office right now is being transformed into a Nina Turner for U.S. Congress office. And those of you that have been to our office, they cleared everything out and they're bringing in all new furniture. It's going to look all nice. I see Judge William Vaudreuil on the call. William, we still have your yard signs. They did not clear those out. We've got them for you. But in any event, that's going to be very exciting. And the tentative grand opening event for that office is the first weekend in March. And we will certainly let you guys know as soon as we know when that is going to happen. Now, the events I talked about, we have the chat closed right now. And what we found through numerous Zoom meetings is it's best not to put all kinds of links in the chat. What we will do is we will send you an email tomorrow with all the events we described and so forth, so you can look at it at your convenience. That email will also have a link to join the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus. And if you join the Progressive Caucus, you'll start getting our emails, of course. But you'll be eligible to vote on our endorsements. And shortly after we have the forum with Governor Whaley, we'll be doing an endorsement vote on the governor's race. The other thing that will be in that email is a donate link. Those of you that have been with the caucus for a while know that we are all volunteer funded, all volunteer staffed, and we depend on small contributions to keep our office open, supplies and that type of thing. So if you can make a contribution when you get the email tomorrow, that would be great. Now, without further ado, I want to introduce Mayor Cranley, who's going to give an opening statement. And then we've got 12 questions that the audience submitted ahead of time. And afterwards, if there's time, we'll take questions in the chat. Before I introduce Mayor Cranley, though, Deb, do you want to say something about the tech?
Yeah, just so that everyone knows, you are on mute. And if we do, as Steve said, if we have time at the end, we will be taking questions through the chat. I'll open the chat back up, but we'll only be through the chat. And that's it. Enjoy.
Okay, Mayor Cranley, before you get started, I just want to say on behalf of the Cuyahoga County Progressive Caucus, most of us being Browns fans, that we are very envious of the Bengals being in the Super Bowl, and we have never done that. But congratulations to your city on what must have been a phenomenal last few weeks.
It was. It's great to be with you all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, it's great to be with you all. And it was a shame we lost. And of course, if it wasn't for Paul Brown being fired by the Browns, we wouldn't exist at all many, many years ago. And so we had a wonderful season and we have a young team. And so if we get a better offensive line, I think we're going to have a heck of a run ahead of ourselves. And of course, Joey Burrow is from Ohio to begin with, so it's quite the Ohio story. Thanks for having me. Let me sort of, if I can, I want to tell you sort of who I am, where I come from, what my values are, and why I believe I should be governor, what I'll do when I'm elected governor, and why I need your help. So I grew up in Cincinnati. My dad's a Vietnam veteran. My mom's a school teacher, daughter of Marines. My grandfather served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. Faith, family, patriotism, service, to whom much is given, much is expected, were core family values. I like to say I was raised by the Sisters of Charity at my St. William's grade school. And then I was ruined by the Jesuits at my St. Xavier High School. St. Xavier is a lot like Ignatius, all boys Jesuit Catholic high school. And if you're not familiar with it, it's sort of the more liberals of the church. Pope Francis is a Jesuit, the only one ever to be. And they emphasize, at least in their teaching, a great deal of social justice. It had a big impact on my life. In fact, after I failed to make the sport teams at St. X, I had to do something. And so I tried out for the school play. And the play was about a human rights activist from El Salvador named Oscar Romero. Of course, Cleveland has a lot of history with human rights activists in Latin America. And of course, Gene Donovan, who was murdered in El Salvador, was from the Cleveland area. Romero was killed in 1980, and he was recently canonized by Pope Francis. If you don't know his story, it's okay. He was basically the Martin Luther King of his country. I had a small part in the play. I was killed 3 separate times. I had blood packets. And candidly, I was doing it mainly to meet the girls from the all-girls school that were in the play with us. But the story was powerful, and it had an impact on my value system and who I wanted to be. But my life really changed on the 3rd day of the show, November 16th, 1989. On that morning, tragically, 6 Jesuit priests were murdered in San Salvador on the same day as our show. So up until then, we thought we were doing a play on ancient history. We thought we were doing a story on the past. And now it felt like we had been rehearsing for the future. I felt an epiphany that day that I should do more than play act on a stage, that I was pretending to be shot and killed within hours of people who had literally been shot and killed, standing up for their ideals, for justice. And so I felt a calling to public service. That calling has led me to where I am today, and took many paths along the way. I went from St. Xavier High School to John Carroll University in Cleveland, more Jesuit education. I was student body president there. I also started a migrant farm worker mission trip to Southern Florida. I picked green peppers. I also chartered the first ever gay-friendly organization at the university, which back then was controversial. I then went to Harvard Law School and Harvard Divinity School. People ask me all the time, why'd you go to Divinity School? I like to say I knew I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to ask for forgiveness in advance. But in many ways, it was to make sure that I would stay true to my purpose. In addition to my political career, which I'll talk plenty about, I was the co-founder of the Ohio Innocence Project, which at the University of Cincinnati has exonerated 34 people in Ohio from prison for being innocent. I started the program. I was the executive director for 5 years. I raised the endowment. I litigated many of the cases. Criminal justice is personal to me because these are my friends who have been freed. In fact, on Monday in Cleveland at Bishop Ward's church on the east side, we will have our social justice tour, and Larice Glover, an exoneree from the East Cleveland 3, will be there to talk about the Innocence Project and about my campaign. Of course, Teresa Fetter, my lieutenant governor, will also be there. It's at 5:30 on Monday at Holy Trinity Baptist on 131st Street. I hope you can attend. Free event. But I digress. One story I'll tell you, the story of Clarence Elkins, who was put in prison for a rape and murder he had nothing to do with, missed the death penalty by 1 vote. Years later, we found a man that looked like Clarence, the #1 reason for wrongful convictions. And we were able to obtain his DNA from the rape and murder. From the semen, we got his DNA by getting him to smoke a cigarette and taking the DNA from the saliva of the cigarette. We then matched it to the biological evidence from the rape and murder. And we proved that not only Clarence was innocent, but we solved the murder. And so I got to be there when Clarence walked out of prison. And he was staying at Mansfield Correctional Institution, where they filmed the movie Shawshank Redemption. I got to see an innocent free man walk out of Shawshank. It's one of the greatest professional moments of my life. I tell you this story because I'm proud of it. You can meet Larice, another exoneree, on Monday. But it also, I think, tells you a little bit about me and about this race. People say, can a Democrat win Ohio? Aren't the odds too long? And I say, I've seen bigger odds overcome. Getting innocent people out of prison is really hard. And frankly, it's harder than winning Ohio. It also tells you about me. I'm a fighter. When I see wrongs, I try to right them. I've overcome some odds in my life many times, including probably the biggest odds was convincing my wife, Dina, to marry me. Dina is a classic American dream family, a Jordanian family that moved to Cincinnati and have lived the American dream, proud Arab American. And my wife and I are raising our son, Joseph, with the same values of service. And we're very blessed. But the other big comeback I've been part of is Cincinnati. Cincinnati is the only major city in Ohio ever to make a comeback in population. Like Cleveland, like Dayton, like Toledo, like Akron, like Canton, like Steubenville, like Chillicothe, all the historic cities of Ohio, like Cincinnati, like Dayton, except for Columbus, we have been in decline my whole life. 1950, we all peaked. And since then, we've all been losing population. And the state of Ohio has been losing economic might, wages, middle class. We've been aging, we're less diverse, et cetera. But now Cincinnati is the only comeback story in Ohio. After my time as mayor, for the first time since 1950, we were up in the census and not down. We grew twice as fast as the state of Ohio. We reduced poverty 1.5 times faster than the state of Ohio. We have more Black-owned businesses that make $1 million a year than any city in Ohio. In short, we have a real comeback that is broad-based and everybody's better off. Poverty's down, wages are up. The middle class is bigger. How do we do this? We did this by implementing democratic ideals. Most importantly, race relations have gotten better and they were in a really bad place. We are a comeback because we were in a very, very bad place 20 years ago. When I was a young city councilman at the age of 26, our city was engulfed in rioting and injustice. We had the first major riots in America post Rodney King after the police shot an unarmed Black man named Timothy Thomas. I was a very young city councilman at the time, and our city was horribly divided. We were the laughingstock of the nation. The Reverend Dr. Damian Lynch III declared a boycott on our city, and the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr. from Cleveland enforced the boycott against our city. The NAACP and the Urban League followed suit. I'm jumping ahead, but I'm very proud to say that 21 years ago, Reverend Lynch and Dr. Moss said, do not spend money in Cincinnati. And today, both men want this mayor of Cincinnati to be governor of Ohio. I have earned their support, and our city has earned real progress. Between 2001 and 2001 and 2021, we arrest half as many people annually as we used to, but shootings are down 75%. We're the only city, only major city in America where shootings were down last year and not up. At the same time, as mayor, I took contracts for Black-owned businesses from 2% of city contracts to 17% of city contracts. We have invested millions in a Black business ecosystem. At the same time, I passed the only $15 living wage in the state of Ohio. I built the largest solar farm ever built by a city in America. The city government of Cincinnati is now carbon neutral because I built 330,000 solar panels on 750 football fields worth of land. Also, I led an effort to pass a levy to double public transportation in Hamilton County and a levy to get 2 years of preschool for all 3- and 4-year-olds in Cincinnati public schools. In short, we have put our ideas into practice. If a lot of things is written about me and said about me, but I'm a doer. A lot of people talk big game about democratic ideals, but they don't actually deliver. We have delivered democratic ideals. And guess what? When we govern with our ideals, things get better. The middle class is bigger, poverty's down, population is up. What we did is the opposite of the trickle down, racially divisive politics of the Ohio Republican Party for the last 30 years. For 30 years, they have shrunk our middle class. We used to make more money than the average American. Now we make 86 cents on the dollar. Their policies are not only trickle down, but they're corrupt, HB6, nickel and dime people. And then, of course, they're attacking women's rights and voting rights and gay rights, all the things that drive young people away. Well, the people of Ohio have been very generous in giving their program a chance to work, but the results are in, and people are worse off today than they were when they took over. You know, those Republicans, they love to quote Ronald Reagan. And Reagan once famously said, "Are you better off today than you were when the other guy took over?" Well, the average Ohioan is worse off since Mike DeWine and these Republicans have run this state. The average Cincinnatian is better off since I was mayor. Mike DeWine and the Republicans have driven this state into the ditch. I've helped drive Cincinnati out of the ditch. Who deserves the car keys going forward? And going forward, we will. I have a plan to rebuild the middle class and to make an Ohio comeback. Many issues to talk about, but let me just mention four. First, we're going to ramp up research and development to grow jobs at our Cleveland clinics, our state universities, which is the #1 driver for jobs in Silicon Valley or Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon or North Carolina, et cetera. Second, I'm going to guarantee that the state creates 30,000 new jobs each year, 120,000 jobs over 4 years that pay a minimum of $60,000 and are available to people who didn't finish college. Now, a $15 living wage, I'm the only one who's done one of those in Ohio. Pays you 30 grand a year, not enough to live on, really. But 60 grand is a middle class life. And the jobs that we will create are to put high-speed broadband Wi-Fi in the whole state, clean water, clean energy, advanced manufacturing, fix the roads and bridges. I'm going to pay for those jobs by legalizing recreational marijuana, taxing it, and putting the taxes into the debt service to pay for the infrastructure investment that will create those jobs. And I'm going to create the first ever dividend, a basic income for all Ohioans, $500 a year from natural gas for families that make 75 grand a year or less, to deal with inflation, to deal with costs, to keep up that middle class. But think about this contrast. The Republicans took money from us and gave it to First Energy. I'm going to take money from the special interest and give it to the people of Ohio. The Republicans are great at messaging. We got to be better. They take money out of your pocket. I'm going to put money in your pocket. This is a message of new ideas, fresh ideas. No Democratic governor has leaned into legalizing marijuana, guaranteeing jobs, a dividend for all Ohioans, and has a track record of delivering previously. I believe, and not just believe, but have tested, polled, that the same voters that voted for Barack Obama and Donald Trump and Sherrod Brown and Jennifer Brunner support this agenda. They support high-speed Wi-Fi, clean water. They support legalized marijuana. They support a dividend. But we need candidates to talk this way and to go out there and win these votes again. There are many other issues that we care about. Women's rights, voting rights, that are under attack. And with a Republican majority, they will continue to be under attack. And the only way we can stop them is to get a veto stamp. And the only way to get a veto stamp is to win. Teresa Federer is the longest serving Democratic woman in the General Assembly. She is a hero of human traffic victims who are survivors because of her leadership. And she has led on so many different fronts, public education being one of many. She also became famous to many people because she shared the difficult decision to have an abortion after she was raped in the military. Now think about this contrast as well. In November, I can say with a straight face, and so will Teresa, that Mike DeWine and John Husted want Teresa or her doctors to be in jail. I want her to be lieutenant governor. This is how we win. We fight. And I know no matter what I say, people are going to worry that no matter what, a Democrat can't win, and no matter what, Ohio's best days are behind it, can't come back. But I'm here to tell you that we can come back, and we can get better, because I know that innocent people can be freed. And I know that cities that were written off as hopelessly racist can have a brighter, more inclusive future. So if elected, I can promise you that Ohio will get better. Thank you. And I look forward to all your questions, and I am in no hurry, and I'm happy to engage in a discussion.
So our first question for you tonight, if you are elected governor, what will you do to help fight inflation in Ohio?
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that everybody gets a $500 dividend. You know, Alaska has a dividend, Republican Alaska. Everyone gets a check for $1,300 on the oil profits. North Dakota started a dividend of about $300 per person. We can't afford that much because we have so many people on a density basis, but we can, I've run the numbers, we can afford on current volumes of natural gas production, $500 per family. It grows at about 10% a year. So within 8 years, it should be roughly $1,000 per year. This, you know, if you're making $20,000 a year, which a lot of people in Ohio do make 20,000 or less, $500 is real money. And this will reduce poverty, shore up the middle class. And that money will be spent in so many communities in Ohio that have been left behind. So I will also take advantage of existing laws of price gouging to go after price gouging. I also will fire all members of the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio. They're obviously corrupt. They incubated HB 6, and they have made us poorer. When you have inflation, you need every dollar to pay for your basics, and they're taking money out of our pockets to bail out a coal plant in Indiana. And so the first thing I'm going to do is fire them all. You know who else fired them all? Dick Celeste from Cleveland, Lakewood. When he was elected, the only governor to be elected twice since World War II, the first thing he did when he was elected governor was fire the public utility commissioners. These people are not fighting for the public, they're fighting for the private interests. And so all of these things will help fight inflation.
Thank you, Mayor Cranley. You mentioned former Governor Celeste. His wife, Dagmar, is a Progressive Caucus member, lives in Lakewood. So,
oh, great.
Next question. How would you make Ohio's environment better?
So first of all, I'm proud to say that I built the largest solar farm in America. As I mentioned, Cincinnati government, not the whole city, but the government services. But that government services includes providing water to 2 million people and sewage services to 800,000 people, is carbon neutral. We put more solar energy in than we use annually to provide those services. It's a role model for the country. And frankly, I've asked the other mayors in Ohio and the other cities to take advantage of what we did, because you need good bulk pricing when you do a project like that in order for it not to cost money. We actually save money. It's cheaper up to a certain point than traditional fossil fuel energy. So first and foremost, I'm the only candidate in America, not just in the state of Ohio, that can say with a straight face that I have built a carbon neutral government service. First and foremost, as governor, I will procure energy for the state and will be able to increase the kind of solar and wind investment by probably 50-fold, given the size of the state government and its energy usage. But at the same time, I'll be creating cooperatives for regional and other city governments to join in on our purchasing power to bring the price down to make clean energy more affordable. This will create tens of thousands of jobs in the clean energy space while I am governor. Second, I'll do everything in my power to, after I fire the public utility commissioners, to put in public utility commissioners that will demand that we return to renewable portfolio requirements for the energy that is produced and pumped in the state of Ohio. At the same time, we will end over a reasonable amount of time, but I believe during my 2 terms as governor, the algae blooms in Lake Erie and in the Ohio River and elsewhere. And we will do this in a variety of ways. First, and this may be counterintuitive, but getting high-speed broadband Wi-Fi to the whole state is critical to ending algae blooms, because believe it or not, I learned this, that tractor equipment, which is high-tech, is incredibly effective at making sure you don't over-fertilize and oversaturate soil, which is a huge contributing factor to the nitrogen and sulfates that end up, phosphorus that ends up in the lake. Farmers are cheap, and as long as they know that their soil is fertilized, they're not going to waste fertilizer or water. And so high-speed broadband makes sure that tractors can work. But H2 Ohio is not a bad idea. It's just not spending anywhere near the money we need to create new wetlands, to create more diversion, to create more setbacks, and to compensate farmers for doing any and all of those things. I have a $2 billion plan for ending the algae blooms in my first 4 years, $8 billion in total spending to do high-speed broadband Wi-Fi, clean water, clean energy, advanced manufacturing, and clean water initiatives. We will also help create in big urban communities like Cuyahoga County and Cincinnati, Hamilton County, et cetera, help pay for the sewer fixes that are required under the EPA, but are expensive when rates go up and up and up. And so we will hire people in inner cities, apprenticeships, people who don't have college degrees, to get the skills they need to do that kind of work. And of course, I will appoint EPA administrators that believe in environmental protection and will do the job well. And I can say this because no one else in America as mayor has delivered as much carbon reduction as I have. And I promise I'll be the greatest reducer of carbon in Ohio's history.
So we have another question on the environment here in Ohio. What will you do to eliminate the use of radioactive brine, specifically when it's used on the roads during ice and snowstorms?
Well, I certainly, well, let me just be honest. I'm not an expert in the radioactive brine personally. And so I don't want to speak on areas that I'm not an expert on. But certainly, I believe that all of the services we provide should strive to be cleaner and greener in all cases. And I have a strong track record of doing that as mayor of Cincinnati.
Thank you, Mayor. Next question. How will you appeal to the Republican voters in this state?
Well, first of all, and I think this is an important, extremely important question, because we all know Trump won the state twice. We all know that it's tough. Democrats like Sherrod Brown, Jennifer Brunner, and Barack Obama all won in recent times. But we all know there's been a shift. Trump's had a very negative impact in a variety of ways, and we've got to somehow win people back. It's also the case that I'm the only, this is not really a debatable point, that no candidate in this race for governor has had more Republican votes, won and earned, in a bigger pie, whether I ran for Congress or whether I was running for mayor, in a much bigger district than I have. And the second largest vote getter in this election that have received Republican votes is my Lieutenant Governor, Teresa Fetter, who has been elected multiple times with over 100,000 votes, and I've received hundreds of thousands of votes. Both of us have had to win tough races where winning moderate or conservative votes was essential to our victories. And so if we're going to go into November, I think all of us as Democrats have to vote for the Democrat that we're most convinced can win and beat the Republicans. Now, specifically, the Republicans that we can win, like the fact that my economic results are better than the Republican results, that Cincinnati is richer, the middle class is bigger, poverty's down. all better than the state of Ohio over the last 10 years, without exception. These are objective facts. No one other candidate in the race can say that. I believe we have to offer hope, and we have the goods to offer that hope. Secondly, we're running on a different message. Democrats usually run on healthcare education. Of course, we have great healthcare education plans. We're better than the Republicans on those things. But we've got to convince them that we can put money in their pockets and that economics, that their ability to pay their bills will get better if we win. The fact is that under the Republicans, they've gotten poorer under HB 6, their corruption, their nickel and dime, their higher sales tax, higher gas tax, all of which are regressive. My plan is to guarantee jobs that pay 60 grand a year to build the infrastructure we need, to provide more economic opportunities for the legalization of marijuana, and to end the over-incarceration that comes with it. 3, to put money in people's pockets from a dividend. And just today, I announced that I believe, as Governor Newsom has introduced in California, that all Ohioans should get some small percentage of the profits from their information being taken by the big tech companies, Facebook, Google, Apple, et cetera. These are real plans that put money in people's pockets. And if you look at the voters, which are disproportionately gathered in the Mahoning Valley or in Appalachia, who voted for Obama and Trump and Sherrod Brown, it is clear that they believe in the kind of economic populism that I'm offering. And the ideas that I'm offering are different. They just haven't been run on before. And I think if we do the same thing that every Democrat's ever done, we're going to lose. But I think if we offer a new way forward with the track record that we have, we can and we will win.
So if the Ohio legislature ends up passing the anti-protest bills, and I can tell you we are one step closer because House Bill 109, which is actually the worst of the lot, actually passed the House today. So do you have a plan to undo the damage in taking away the right to protest in Ohio?
Obviously, I'll do everything I can do. I believe in free speech. I believe in freedom. In fact, I believe one of the ways we're going to win is to talk more openly about freedom. The fact is that this summer, Mike DeWine signed a bill that says local government can now prevent farmers from doing wind and solar projects. Because when my solar project was done, people said that they thought Bill Gates owned the solar panels and were sending laser beams into their brains. And so these crazies passed a law that says government knows better than farmers when they should do wind and solar. Mike DeWine thinks people like Teresa Fetter should be in jail. I think she should be lieutenant governor. I believe that marijuana should be a business. Mike DeWine thinks it should be a crime. In all of these cases, we're on the side of freedom. And they're on the side of government telling people what to do with their bodies, with their businesses, with their farms, at the expense of clean energy, and further over-incarcerating people with putting people behind state-run penitentiaries and giving them freedom and opportunity. Again, I believe we need to talk this way about freedom, and I think it's critical to how we're going to win. And of course, that involves protecting the freedom to protest.
The next question is kind of a follow-up to the question Deb asked. Do you have any regrets over the way you handled the aftermath of the George Floyd protests in Cincinnati?
Well, look, it's easy. Being a mayor in a major city in the aftermath of George Floyd is difficult for anyone. And my heart goes out to everyone in those situations. Just, it's a hard balance to do. I am very proud to say that Cincinnati had only one night of looting, and we had 4 weeks of the largest protests in the history of our city. I participated in some. My police chief took a knee at a protest in solidarity with the police. With Black Lives Matter protesters. Cincinnati was the only major city in 2021 to have crime go down. We led on police reform issues over the last 20 years, and I personally was involved in negotiating those reforms in 2002 and 3 and helped keep them going and their spirit enhanced as mayor. And I can promise you that the civil rights leaders that boycotted us 20 years ago that have now endorsed my campaign would not have endorsed me for governor if they didn't believe that I cared deeply about civil rights. And as the co-founder of the Ohio Innocence Project, I know better than anybody that police and government can mistreat its citizens. And I have spent a big part of my career trying to right those wrongs and will always continue to do so.
So the next question is, will you increase the funding for and protect Medicaid in Ohio?
Absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up because, and I should talk about it more, but another part of my plan is to dramatically expand what's called federally qualified health centers throughout Ohio. Federally qualified health centers are primary care facilities that include basic primary care, but also addiction care, Suboxone for heroin addicts, Narcan, of course, for our police and fire to revive people. It includes dental care, mental health care, depression care, which is part of mental health care, et cetera. It's paid for under Obamacare. There are 88 counties in Ohio. 47 counties don't have a single federally qualified health center in their county. I know a lot about this because Cincinnati is one of the only cities in America that has 6 of its own health clinics. We provide direct government health care in Cincinnati. And so I oversaw that effort for the last 8 years. And I know how to expand it. It doesn't cost money. In fact, it just insists that our federal tax dollars come back to us to provide healthcare to people who don't have it. And so this is another way I'm going to win Republican and conservative votes in Appalachia and other parts of our state by bringing primary healthcare centers to counties and rural parts of the state that don't have them. And so I'm very excited to do so. And that's another way we're going to make Ohio better, but also win.
Okay, the next question was going to be on PUCO, but you answered it previously, so we're going to substitute for one that just appeared in the chat. What's your plan to fight the opioid crisis in Ohio?
Well, obviously, as the mayor of Cincinnati for the last 8 years, I've had a lot of experience with this. I think, and a lot of people, myself included, didn't understand a lot of what I'm about to say. So, and some of you may know this, some of you may not. Opiates, of course, have been unique. You know, I'm for legalizing marijuana, but opiates have been uniquely dangerous throughout human history. The ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, the ancient Chinese, all banned them. China lost a century to the Opium Wars, which was imposed upon it by Britain. A terrible history. The drug companies knew damn well that opiates are uniquely addictive and disruptive to productivity of living a normal life. Whereas I think an occasional drink, or if you partake in marijuana, is going to, if not abused, can still lead to normal lives. They knew that they were profiting. I was one of the only people in Ohio that objected to the settlement, which I thought was far too cheap, that was recently entered into against the opiate companies for purposely marketing opiates to Ohioans and the whole country. The most important fact is this: if you were prescribed by your doctor 30 days of Oxycontin, which is medical heroin, you had a 1 in 3 chance of being a heroin addict in a year. That's like Russian roulette. 1 in 3. And the opiate crisis, they were popping out Oxycontin and other opiates like candy. Opiates is a wonder drug for people in acute extreme pain, properly prescribed, or in a battlefield of your legs blown off, and at the end of life when you're just trying to put somebody at ease. In those cases, opiates can be a miracle drug, but they cannot be chronic medical use effectively, which is why marijuana and other options need to be available. So the state of Ohio regulates the ability of doctors and dentists to prescribe opiates. And the number one way to reduce opiate addiction is to prohibit the prescriptions of opiates for chronic illnesses and diseases, and almost never allow someone to have more than 2 or 3 days unless they are in extreme pain or end of life. And the governor has the ability to appoint the people to the boards to make sure that that happens. That, more than anything else, will end the opiate scourge, because tragically and sadly, and we all know people where this has happened to them. Child, friend, great life, athlete, gets an injury, got Oxycontin, became a heroin addict. These are chemicals in the brain. This is bigger than us. And it has ruined so many lives. For those who are already caught up in addiction, we need to invest in the federally qualified health centers, as I described, and make Suboxone, which is a medically assisted treatment, as well as addiction service treatment and counseling, to give people a chance to come out of it. In Cincinnati, we dramatically expanded needle exchange, Suboxone treatment, all of the above, and we've seen success with it.
So our next question is about workers. As you're probably aware, we do not have one department that handles all of the different issues facing workers in Ohio. Would you commit to establishing a Department of Labor in your administration?
Absolutely. And I believe that equally important is what we have done and what we will do. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm the only one who's ever implemented a $15 living wage for all city work and anyone who contracts with the city. And candidly, every other mayor and part of the state could have done the same, but they chose not to. I also passed the only local prevailing wage law in the state to help avoid loopholes that developers take advantage of to get around prevailing union wage jobs when they use city money. I also have a plan, as I mentioned, to create 30,000 jobs a year, 120,000 over the course of my governorship, all of which will be union jobs to do roads and bridges, high-speed Wi-Fi, clean water, clean energy, replace pipes. There'll be no Flint, Michigan if I'm governor. These are all good union paying jobs that the state will pay for. It's also the case that the unions that have worked for me, Council 8 AFSCME president in my city has endorsed me. The firefighters in my city have endorsed me. Those unions that have worked for me want me to be governor. It is factually true that those same leadership in Dayton are also supporting me. And so I believe that the best way that you can the best way to prove how you're going to treat people in organized labor is how did the people that you've already treated think you did? And I'm proud to say that I have earned the support of the AFSCME leadership in Cincinnati and the Cincinnati firefighters.
Thank you, Mayor Cranley. The next question deals with, I think, one of the most important tasks the entire General Assembly has to do, and it will occur about a year from now. And it is, what will be your priorities in the first executive budget you submit to the Ohio Legislature?
Well, it's going to be implementing this agenda that I've outlined, which involves radically increasing research and development at our state universities, our Cleveland clinics, our hospitals to attract jobs, to make sure that we get the bonding necessary to do the infrastructure to put those 30,000 jobs in place that pay 60 grand per job. 3, to legalize marijuana, to tax it to help pay for those jobs, and to provide this dividend. At the same time, I will be in a position already to expand dramatically clean energy through my procurement power as governor for energy across the state. And as I mentioned, I'll make sure that we can seed the federally qualified health centers in all those counties that don't have one, which frankly doesn't require a lot of money because Obamacare will pay the lion's share of it.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is at least one progressive policy that you would spearhead if you are elected governor in Ohio?
Well, I think all of what I've described is progressive. Guaranteeing jobs, that the government will create annually that pays 60 grand, legalizing marijuana, providing the first ever basic income. There's a great debate in progressive circles about whether we should have a job guarantee or a guaranteed income. I'm doing a little bit of both. I'm proposing both a guarantee of jobs and a guaranteed dividend, both from natural gas. But if I get my way, and there's will be some federal law, so I don't want to overpromise on this, but if I can get this dividend from information from Facebook and Google and Apple, given the disparity of wealth in this country, that's exactly how we can bridge it. That's exactly why Governor Newsom has proposed it. Obviously, given my deep history on race relations in Cincinnati, I can promise you that as the executive that licenses every police officer in the state, I will implement best training practices of de-escalation, mental health, bias, implicit bias training, all the things that Cincinnati has done to lead to a better outcome of police community relations. Those are just to name a few.
And this is our last question that was submitted ahead of time. And then I think we'll have some time. If you want to put a question in the chat, we'll get to that as well. And the question is, what do you think about the way Governor DeWine is handling the COVID crisis? And is there anything that you would do differently?
I believe that Governor DeWine has failed us in multiple ways. One, I think he should have stood up for Amy Acton, whose birthday is today. Happy birthday, Amy Acton. I also believe that, and I asked him to do this, he could have and should have equipped the schools to be open in person sooner by, we made our rec centers available in Cincinnati. He could have and should have provided much more open spacing for schools to be open. And I think he should have done more to help congregant living. The fact is that 90% of the people who have died of COVID are over the age of 60. 75% were in congregate care, whether it's prisons or in nursing homes. 50% were over the age of 85. And so I believe, and this is what we did in Cincinnati, is create task force to work directly with nursing homes and centers and congregate living settings, because that's where the greatest risk was.
So we have a question from the chat from Ann Caruso. What is your position on fracking in Ohio?
Well, I think we have to move towards a clean energy future, which is why I built the largest solar farm in America. I think realistically, natural gas is going to be part of Ohio's future. There's just no way around it. And the number one contributor to the reduction of the carbon footprint of America over the last 10 years has been the shift from coal to natural gas. What I'd like to see is a couple of things. One, we need to have EPA administrators who believe in regulating the industry. The biggest risk environmentally is leakage of methane from the source of drilling. There has to be a zero tolerance for any methane leakage because that is worse than CO2 emissions, although it doesn't last as long as CO2. CO2 could last 200-300 years in the atmosphere. Methane is more about 10 to 15 years, but it's very potent. There has been great technological advances on that, but there needs to be more. The other thing I strongly believe is banning imported injection wells in the state of Ohio. Because the Republicans are in the pocket of these special interests, they have allowed Ohio to become the sewer of America for all the crap that comes up after a natural gas fracking exploration. Obviously,